tuning in. This is Breaking Down the Borders, and I'm Linda Furiate. With me today is Evan Bortnick, an American-born opera singer and astrologer now living in Germany. Evan, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm really good. It's nice to be here, Linda. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, you are welcome. You were on my list, and I definitely wanted to make sure I interviewed you. Now, you have quite a varied creative background, and so I want to know, how did an opera singer from New York City wind up in Germany practicing craniosacral theory and, above all, become an astrologer?
That's a really great question, and it's one I ask myself all the time. I spent 10 years freelancing as an opera singer out of New York City. Okay. And when I turned 30, I sort of had this deep and unsatisfied longing for Europe. I was really curious because it is a European art form. I wanted to come over here like so many American singers before me and sing in the beautiful theaters and drink the wine and breathe the air and meet the women and come over here and basically be an opera star. So when I turned 30, I came over here. In 5 weeks, I sang like 16 auditions, and Wiesbaden was the best offer. Basically, I got an offer at the Staatsoper in Vienna to sing small parts, or at the Staatsoper in Wiesbaden, which is a much smaller theater, to sing large parts. And so it was basically a question: do I want to be a small frog in a big pond, or a big frog in a small pond? I decided it was more fitting for me to be a large frog in a smaller pond. So I came over here, fell in love with the theater, I fell in love with the town, I fell in love with the lifestyle, I fell in love with a woman, and 27 years later, I'm still here. So at the same time, I was always curious, because I'd always been teaching voice. I was always curious, what's the difference in how people learn, especially at an auditive level? Yeah? How do people learn parts? How do people establish new vocal habits? And I encountered numerous models and a lot of different theories. And the one that I found the most fascinating was the astrological archetypal model. So like so many people before me, I went on the internet and I started doing searches, and I ended up at a site at that time called the Online College of Astrology, and sent an email to Ina Stanley with one single question. Yeah? And she was nice enough, without any pay, to answer that one question. And the answer was so fascinating that it in turn produced 20 more questions, which I then, of course, proceeded to ask, and which she proceeded without cost to answer. And each of those questions produced 20 more. As you can imagine, I'm now bathing in questions about astrology and how it relates to people and how they live their lives and how they interpret and understand the human part of their own human beingness. And so after asking pretty much the 40th question, Ina said, why don't you just register for a class? Then you can ask the teachers the question, yeah? So I registered for a class, and it was so much fun and so rewarding and so enlightening that I registered for another one. One thing led to the other. I finished my diploma there. I then went on to do a diploma in psychological astrology with Glenn Perry, who also teaches at the school, Dr. Glenn Perry. And then I was what were all my titles at OCA? I was the Dean of Education, and then the Dean of professional training, and one thing led to the other, and then I was a consultant, then I was on the board of directors, and I basically made astrology into my second calling, and I use it a great deal now in the way I teach voice. In other words, I have the charts of all my students somewhere, either consciously or unconsciously in my head, and can organize my interventions around their archetypes, basically. So that's the rather long answer to a rather short question.
That's great. Now, you will be speaking at the Breaking Down the Borders conference. I believe your talk is Saturday, November 20th at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Explain your talk a little bit. What are you going to be talking about?
Yeah, in my work with Glenn, with Dr. Perry, I was always curious, especially in an astrological consultation, what is resistance, and how can we understand resistance? I mean, you tell somebody something about themselves from an archetypal standpoint, where their Mars is, where their Saturn is, where their Neptune is, and you get either this, a nod, or you get this, the head goes to the side and you get a sort of a little thing, or you get this. No, that's not me at all. Yeah, and now one of the important questions for the consulting astrologer is, how do you deal with that form of resistance? Or another way to say that is, how can you formulate your archetypal statements in such a way that it encourages your client to think about their lives in an archetypal way, instead of, oh, you have Mars in Aries in the first house, conjunct Jupiter. That means you're an aggressive person. That's not what it's about. What it's about is inner wiring, and to find the wordings that encompasses and paces resistance is part of the art and science of astrological consultation.
If people want to learn more about Evan Bortnick, how can they get a hold of you?
Oh, they can find my address through the school, yeah. And this talk will be done at astrology.org, yeah. And my internet address is at the school itself. So if anyone has any questions about the talk or is curious about what I'm going to do there, then feel free to contact me.
Great. And then the conference website is astrologyconference.org. And then the school is astrocollege.com. So great. Evan, we are out of time. I really appreciate you coming online with me today. This is Linda Furiate for Breaking Down the Borders.